back to my channel. My name is Andrea. In today's video, I'm going to show you everything that I have for my Ambleside Online Year 3 student. So Ambleside Online is a free curriculum that anybody can use. It is a Charlotte Mason method of giving an education, which is basically educating through books, reading books, discussing them, narrating them back to other people so that you can say what you read, say what you know, basically. And it's a wonderfully simple way to get an education, and I love it so much. And my kids seem to be thriving on it as well. So we're just going to continue on using Ambleside Online as our core spine curriculum. There's very few things that I change about the readings that we do through the Ambleside Online schedule of readings. I just probably will go at a different pace than what they're scheduled, just due to our family structure and our schedules and things like that. But we basically get through pretty much all of the readings, maybe not quite one or two of them, within the year at some point. I will just show you everything, especially the books that are on the Ambleside Online reading list, because I just find that I like to see what we're talking about here. When I first got started using Ambleside Online, I had not heard of pretty much everything that they had listed. So I had no idea what to expect. How big are these books? Do they look difficult to read? All of these things. So I'm going to be showing that to you today, as well as some of my personal choices for what my daughter will be using for things like math and reading and stuff like that. That is just a personal choice that Ambleside Online leaves up to you to be flexible and pick out on your own. So what I will do first is show you that if you go to the Ambleside Online website, you can print off the schedule for the year that you want to be working with. And many homeschool parents are super creative and they can change all this to be a very cool list, a very cool schedule. I am not creative, and so every time I use this, I just print it off and then I check off the readings as I complete them. So that's been my method, and it's been working for a couple of years now. If you want to follow along on the list with me, I am going down Ambleside Online Year 3, and we'll just start at the top with this subject. These are all of the weekly readings. So for week 1, these are all of the different readings that we would do in week 1 with Ambleside Online. So the first one is Bible, and during week 1, you read 2 chapters out of Joshua 1 and 2. Oh, I will also say that a lot of these readings I will just read to my daughter, and some of the readings, if I remember to let you know which ones I plan on having her mostly read on her own, I'll let you know. Year 3 is kind of like this in-between time where your student's starting to handle more reading on their own, but yet still needing a lot of parental help with reading or the use of audiobooks. I have several things marked on my list here that I'm planning on just having the audiobook do the reading for me. For one, because a lot of times it can do it way better than I can. Like, I love the Princess and the Goblin audio version because it's just so much more interesting than I can make the book sound. So anyway, I'll let you know as we go if I have marked on if I'm planning on this to be an audiobook or whatever. So anyway, so you just read straight out of the Bible. Probably what I'll do, because a chapter would be kind of a lot for my daughter to do all in one chunk, we'll probably, trade off, have her read 5 verses, I'll read 5 verses, something like that for our Bible reading. But she loves to read out of this children's Bible. It is just a regular ESV translation, but it has a lot of really beautiful pictures throughout. Nothing childish about it, just a lot of illustrations, and she finds that interesting. That is what we do for Bible, Old Testament, and then there's also a New Testament reading as well. Moving down to the history reading of the week, we read out of A Child's History of the World. These are very short. I typically read these because sometimes there are some culturally insensitive words. This is an old book, and so I kind of just change it a little bit to be more in an appropriate language. And I'm talking like very few amounts of time, but I just like to do this reading out loud. But that does not take away from the fact that these are great stories and very interesting, and they're very short. I mean, here's a story right here. You would just read this page, until right there. Another part of the history is this country of ours. This is about the United States. This starts out at the very beginning with Vikings coming to that piece of land. So this is a 3-part series. I have already read this one through once before with my son, with my daughter casually listening, and now this will be her really paying attention and narrating this back to me as well. My son in year 4 is just finishing up volume 2 of this, and in year 5 he's moving on to volume 3. So this is kind of like a core piece of the history. So this is one that I also like to do out loud together. Again, I would say each reading may take, let's say, 10 minutes out of the day for when you have this reading to do. We also have Our Island Story. I love this. This is British history, which is really interesting. So much is connected to our country. I also find it interesting because I live here in England, and I'm just learning so much. And so I really love this book. I've recommended it to so many people just to read as an interesting book. Pretty short stories. It might take 10 minutes to get through this as well. And you just read probably like 1 chapter a week. There are even some weeks where you don't read a chapter at all, but most weeks you just read 1 chapter out of this. And so that's fine. The next one out of history is reading out of Trial and Triumph. These are Christian stories, mostly of martyrs, but also just other big names in the faith that you want to know about and have heard about. So these are, again, just little short stories, probably 5 minutes each every time you have a chapter to read on a particular week. So if I'm looking at Trial and Triumph, like there's only 3 readings out of this one for all of the first term on Ambleside Online. We're just reading about Martin Luther, William Tyndale, and John Calvin. And that's it out of this book. And this is a continuation from year 2. So we've already read this much through year 2. We will read a little bit more. This is where my year 3 is right now. And he will also, this is where my year 4 is right now. He'll be continuing to finish the book in year 5, I believe. So this is a book that takes you years to get through because it's not a continuous story. They're like little stories, but in chronological order. So I really enjoy this, and so do the kids. So that was it for Bible and history. And I'm talking about just term 1 right now. Most of these are continued throughout the entire year. So don't think like, oh my goodness, these are so many books. It's like you have the whole year to get through most of these. And on a lot of these, like Trial and Triumph, you're just getting through a section of this book in a year. So it kind of looks like a lot, but it's actually very doable. For biography, we will be reading this biography about Leonardo da Vinci. It actually looks quite easy. I'll probably see how this goes. She may start to read pieces of this out loud to me. I've also thought about just using this as a morning basket time with everybody because I think that my son would like to hear it as well. This is one that I did not do with him. So yeah, we might just kind of put this in our morning basket and read through it as a family. For geography, we have Marco Polo. I also read this with my son and he loved it. I highly recommend while you read it, have a globe or a map out so that your student can actually track the progress of Marco Polo, because that's kind of half of it. Like that's why this is actually a geography book so that you can see all of his travels and where he was. Adding to that, this is not on the list, but I do plan on just having this as a fun morning basket time. A child's geography of the world. So this is not an assigned book, but again, they just have these short little things, these short little geography stories that are really fun and interesting. For natural history, we have this book called Pigou. And this is a story where, again, you just read like 1 chapter a week, and like this is a chapter, these 2 pages, sometimes 3. Yeah. They're really pretty pictures, really interesting story. This is how you learn all about tide pools from the perspective of a hermit crab. So it's amazing how much you learn. We've done all of these books. We have Paddle to the Sea, Seabird, Men of the Mississippi, Tree in the Trail. Tree in the Trail was my favorite because it goes through where I'm from, like in the Kansas area. So I just loved that book. Highly recommend these books, even if you don't use Ambleside Online. These are wonderful kind of science/history books. And then also for science, we have This is a Drop of Water. And it's just all of these little experiments. So you might have 1 experiment a week. using water. And don't get scared when I say experiment, because you have these things. It's like this experiment, you need a cup of water and a paper clip. These are all things that you definitely have, like soap to make soap bubbles with. So this is not like an extensive science lab type of a thing. You might be talking about ice and all of that. So this is actually really fun, easy to get through. I was actually surprised we did this with my son when he was in year 3. We'll do it again. I'm sure that he'll want to be a part of it as well, because this takes like, again, 5-10 minutes of like a little experiment with water. They're learning all about the properties of water and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. And I was surprised on how much I like it, because I tend to shy away from sciencey stuff. Again, that's one of the things that I love about homeschool is I'm finding that all of the things that I thought that I wasn't good at or didn't like, I'm actually finding more interesting and rediscovering the interest that maybe I had lost in the past for some of these topics. So that is science. Next, moving on to literature. I'm right here on our sheet if you're following along. This is the book of Tall Tales. So they're all American stories. And this is one that I really do think that my daughter will be able to read on her own and narrate back to me, because they are really fun and interesting stories. It's not difficult vocabulary or anything like that. She will definitely be able to read this one on her own and then just narrate back to me what she read. Parables of Nature. This one I will be reading out loud. I don't know if you're unfamiliar with this book. This book is kind of tricky for some people, because you start reading this maybe even in year 1. Do you read a couple of these in year 1? Definitely in year 2. And many times your student will not be getting what is going on, because they're talking about birds or nature or things like this, flowers, but on such a spiritual level that, you know, I've read whole chapters to my kids and they're like, I don't get it. And yet I will be crying. This is kind of one where use your judgment on if you just think that you might be wasting your time, but also you might not realize that stuff is kind of sinking in. And it also might be more for you than them sometimes. I'm seeing more and more understanding and fruit from this. I think that's just because the older and more mature my kids are getting, the more they're understanding spiritual concepts, you know, the more Bible reading that we're doing and just doing all of these other literature-based programs, they're kind of comprehending a lot more. So we will be continuing on with Parables from Nature. Again, it's not even a chapter a week. Let me see. Yeah, in term 1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters that you read out of this book in the entire term. So again, this is another one of those books that take you years to get through. And you can also, since there's only 4 chapters in term 1, this is a great time to pick it up if you didn't do it in year 2. You can add in more to kind of catch up, or just start it on whatever pace you want. But anyway, this one's really good. Heroes. This is all about Greek legends, their stories. This may be one that I was planning on doing an audio version of. I think that my daughter will get more out of it with if she follows along while it's being read aloud to her, just because of all of the names and keeping the characters straight and things like that. But this will be a reading that we do. However, just so you know, I plan on this summer reading through the Greek myths to both my kids during morning time. And I feel like that will kind of prep her a lot for a lot of these stories. But I really just love this book, and this is not assigned reading. And the pictures are so beautiful that your children will just be captivated with the stories and the illustrations and all of that. So if you're into doing the Greek myths and things like that with your kids, this one is really great. Also, I mean, my son did really enjoy this when he read it. He was able to read this on his own. I don't think that my daughter will be quite there, but I think that she'll be perfectly capable of following along as it's being read through an audiobook. I already did Parables of Nature, so I got that out of order. The next one on the list is Princess and the Goblin, and I don't actually have a physical copy of that because we have already done that one as an audiobook, and I plan on just having her listen to that again in audiobook form because She listened to that when she was in the first grade, and she could hear it again. Like, she probably doesn't remember the story at all, so I'll have her do that one on her own. For Shakespeare, we'll be using from Simply Charlotte Mason. We'll be doing this one first, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Basically, what you do here is you read the summarized version of the story from Beautiful Stories from Shakespeare, and then you go and you read through the actual play. You will also watch it after you are done reading it. And I heard that you kind of have to be careful which versions you watch, especially of this one. So I'll be trying to find one that will be the most kid-friendly possible for A Midsummer Night's Dream. Pilgrim's Progress. So this one I'm thinking about, I may not start this right at the first term because so much other stuff will be starting at that point, but it's Pilgrim's Progress. And just last year we read through as a family Little Pilgrim's Progress, which is taken from John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, but easier to understand, comprehensible language for kids. I also just have the original Pilgrim's Progress, which I think that I would like to now read this version with my kids as well, but all together. So this one might be put into a morning basket situation, but maybe more halfway through the year. This one might take 4 or 5 months. So I'll probably start this one later, but it's definitely a part of my plan to get through the original Pilgrim's Progress with my kids this year. And then poetry, I have these anthologies that Ambleside Online puts together with the 3 poets that you go through, or sorry, this is 4 poets that you go through. I had never heard of any of these poets before we started Ambleside Online, and I have grown to love each and every one of them, especially William Blake. I don't know, I really love his poetry. I'm excited for my daughter to use this. Just each day you read a poem, and that's it. Pretty easy. Okay, so now moving on to the next page where you have your daily subjects. So these are the things that you work on every day. There's things like copy work, phonics, or reading practice, recitation, math, foreign language, physical activity. Okay, so for copy work, I have a couple of things. I put penmanship under copy work. So I do have her doing a penmanship program through Rod and Staff. I love their penmanship program. She and my son are on the same level, even though he's a couple years older than her, just because he was writing great, he was doing cursive, but I just wasn't seeing like an improvement to make it more beautiful until I put him on the Rod and Staff. She'll be continuing on the Rod and Staff penmanship program with the level 3. I also, for copy work, and you can do copy work however you want. I mean, you can just take little sentences or paragraphs from readings that you've done that maybe you want to reinforce and just have them copy it out. Maybe keep a little commonplace book for them, something like that. I also, just for the summer, got these. These are scripture journals, technically, but I'm using them as copy work. So I got the Psalms, one for each of my kids. It's a spiral bound, just book of Psalm, but it has a blank page on every page. So I'm like, oh, that would be the perfect way to do copy work. She's just been copying the Psalms like this when I don't have anything else for her to do copy work on. I'll just say, why don't you get out your book of Psalms and do the copy work. I will caveat to say that this is great for right-handers, but they don't have it, like it's not just a blank here. The blank page is always right here. It's always right here on this side, perfect for right-handers, but not so much for left-handers. I kind of wish that this was a completely interleaved where this was all blank and so that you could go back and forth, but no. I mean, it's fine for us because we're all right-handers around here, but I do have lefties in the family and I care about you guys, so this would be quite annoying for a left-handed writer if you were to ask me. Phonics or reading practice? With that, let me see. I am kind of just plugging along with the Rod and Staff stuff that we were using for this year. My daughter, when we started on year 2, I was really just focusing a lot on phonics, on making sure she was learning how to read properly and just really focusing on that, not on a whole lot else, not on grammar, stuff like that, because I'm like, well, you need to know how to read really well before we move on to some of these things. And so that was like a little bit more of a struggle for her. She's reading great now, but she's only like now at the end of her 2nd grade year, she's just starting to get really comfortable with just opening up a book and reading straight from it. So I would say that she's doing great. She's reading books on her own, but we only got like halfway through all of the grade 2 stuff when it came to the Rod and Staff reading program and stuff like that, because we just went through it a lot more slowly because I didn't want it to be overwhelming or hard or anything like that. So we'll continue on with her reading through Rod and Staff, the more stories about God's people. They have these little workbooks that we don't do all of, but I do like to do the part where it says, here are some words to become familiar with before you start reading. So you use these words a few times in some examples. And so then by the time you go to the reading, these are now a little bit more familiar words for you, and you still work on phonics and stuff through this. So I'm going to kind of continue on just using this for her reading and phonics. And we also have English 2 from Rod and Staff, where we only got through like workbooks 1 and 2. So I still have workbooks like 3 and 4 to get through as well, where you are doing some of the parts of speech and diagramming sentences and learning about verbs, nouns, pronouns, things like that. So we'll do this with her, but I'm not just finding it to be necessary to get anything new or different, because we still have a lot of this left that I think is still going really well for us. She will be already done with spelling for year 2 through Rod and Staff. So I'm going to move on with her to spelling 3 for Rod and Staff for next year. This is another thing that you just have to make a personal decision. For whatever reason, my son just knows how to spell. This has nothing to do with me whatsoever. He just remembers what words look like. He remembers the rules of spelling. The more he reads, the better he gets at spelling. And I have just never found the need for him to do like a spelling program. When he does his written narrations, if he misspells a word, which isn't that often, I'll show him the correct way to spell that word. And then he moves on from there. So it is just like not an issue. It would be a waste of his time to do a spelling program. I did get Rod and Staff year 5 spelling for him just to do as like, if I need him to have something to work on, but not for anything that he needs to be tested on or anything like that. However, with my daughter, who struggles a little bit more in this area, I do find that it helps her to do the spelling program. So she does a lesson a week, and you go through different exercises to learn the spelling rules, and now they're incorporating all of their cursive into it as well. And it's just a really solid program that goes at a good pace, and it's really helping her, and it's helping her have a lot more confidence in her writing. There's recitation. Recitation can be like, they have examples that you can use on Ambleside Online for things that you can memorize, poems, scripture, things like that. Or if you have a particular piece of scripture or poems or things like that that you want your kids to memorize, then by all means do that. Like I had my kids memorize the 23rd Psalm, but it wasn't necessarily assigned when we did it. I just wanted them to know it. Okay, and then for math, for year 2, she did Math with Confidence 2. This year for 3rd grade, she's doing Rod and Staff grade 3, and she's already started with it because Math with Confidence was more of like a 4-day-a-week program, so she was done. So I'm just going to have her move on to grade 3. She's already through even the first test of grade 3, so she's moving right along with this. I love Rod and Staff math. I also love Math with Confidence. I said once before on a video that, oh yeah, she did Math with Confidence. Next year we'll be doing Rod and Staff math, and people were like, why? What's wrong with Math with Confidence? There's nothing wrong with it at all. I just already had this because my son used it, and he's not happy at all that he couldn't write in the book. He had to copy his problems onto a separate sheet of paper, and yet my daughter's just writing her answers directly in the book. But that's why I had him do that, so I could save it and use this again on the next student. So anyway, she's just writing straight into this book. It's moving at a great pace for her, and I love the teaching manual that comes with it. I love how this is now like my 3rd year using Rod and Staff teaching math, and kind of have it down at this point. Like I know what I'm doing. I know the process. We may be making some changes here. I'm kind of starting to look towards the future for my son. I'll talk about this in a different video. And I might be having him move to a different math, one that doesn't use me as a teacher, so that he can have more independence and just moving forward in his studies. But for my daughter, Rod and Staff grade 3 math, love it. It comes with speed drills and just the booklet of tests. Super straightforward math, all of the math fact practice that you want. That's what I have her doing for math. For foreign language, I have her doing a couple of things. We focus a lot on Spanish, and there's not just one thing that I use for Spanish. I use a lot of things. I use Pimsleur. The Pimsleur lessons are about 30 minutes each. Many times for my daughter, I'll just have her do 15 minutes at a time. And I'll also have her repeat a lot of lessons as well, just because it's made for adults, but she can certainly learn so much from that. I also have her doing Speedy Spanish from Christian Light Education. This is just a really great beginner Spanish grammar, learning some Spanish songs. Like, it just kind of has everything. I did a whole review on this in another video that I will link as well. And then I also love Speaking Spanish with Miss Mason and Francois. This is learning these different series of things, like learning how to say something in English, this whole series of the process of washing your hands, and then you learn how to say all of that stuff in Spanish. There's also just little recitations that you learn in Spanish as well. So this is another one that it's also not consumable, so you can just use it again and again. But I like having a mix. I think that learning Spanish is kind of learning any kind of foreign language. You kind of just have to have a lot of different things to pull from so that it's not becoming dry. I also have a ton of children's books, and I will have the kids watch like videos in Spanish and stuff like that. And I myself am trying to just learn Spanish as much as I can so that I can continue to use it around the house in everyday life. But I will also have my daughter start Latin. I did not choose to have her start in the second grade. It was always my plan to start Prima Latina in the second grade. But I just never found it to be an appropriate time for her. My son did it in the second grade, but like I said, with her struggling a bit with reading, I just thought it was going to be way too much. Like, it would just be a waste of her time, and it would, right from the get-go, I feel like, make Latin stressful, not fun, all of these things. But I think that she's definitely ready now to start Prima Latina. So we will start this probably late summer, early fall. And I love Prima Latina from Memoria Press. However, I will say that I don't know how much I'll continue after Prima Latina with Memoria Press. I used to think that they were probably the only way to go, and now I've just found so many other resources that you can use. I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful way to get started. I also do love that it reinforces English grammar along with it. If you also get Introduction to English Grammar, so as you're learning the parts of speech in Latin, they have an English version as well. So kind of the two are reinforcing each other. So I will walk her through this program. So this is really just trying to introduce her to Latin and have her fall in love with it. So that's my goal. That's my goal for Latin for her. Here's art stuff. Art, we do a lot with my daughter with art. She loves art. There's a drawing class on Master Books Academy that she enjoys taking right now. She loves just doing drawing lessons that are on YouTube. Kids Art Hub, I believe, on YouTube is what we follow along a lot with. I also highly recommend, if you can get your hands on this, a drawing textbook by Bruce McIntyre. You can get this on his website, drawwithbruce.com. It really just teaches the fundamentals of drawing, so we will continue using this. We are not quite done with it. It's taken us, more than a year to get through. I can't remember when I first started talking about this. It's probably been a year and a half, and we're still not done with it. So there's still lots that you can do with this. I love just teaching how you can draw anything you want with certain fundamentals that you can learn through this textbook. So that's really good. Okay, for artist study, so now we are down, art or drawing is something that you do weekly. And so these are all weekly things that you can do. And don't feel bad if you don't get to all of these. I never get to all of these every single week. It's just kind of like maybe we should go do a nature study this week. We didn't do one last week, something like that. So for artist study, I love these by Elizabeth Ripley. These come from Purple House Press, but these are artist studies where they go through their works, but they kind of tell it with a story behind it. So you get to see so many beautiful paintings. You get to see so many beautiful paintings, learn about the artist, but in a very comprehensible way of going through their life in the form of a story. So they also come with prints as well that you can just use as a picture study, but I like how this is an artist study and a picture study kind of in one. So we'll continue using these. I also have artist studies from Simply Charlotte Mason that I plan to use this year as well. Composer study, we are going to be using these from Simply Charlotte Mason. We haven't started on them yet, but again, it's so this is Handel. It starts with a story of his life, a day in the life of Handel. They'll go through different sections on which pieces to listen to, more stories about him and his life. Okay, so then there's timeline work, map work, handicrafts. I don't really have anything to show you. For timeline work, I just print off and bind it like a book of centuries. And so then as we're reading about Marco Polo or reading about Handel, they put these things in their book of centuries. So that's what they do. For him, I just find hymns in our hymnal that I want to work on for a particular month. And by work on, I just mean learn how to sing it and sing it for, one day a week for a month. A lot of them are just hymns that I personally like, that I grew up with, that I want to be a part of my kids' memories as well. A lot of hymns that we will hear maybe in church. We've been going to an Anglican church here in England, and it has really been interesting to be part of such an old church tradition, and hearing all of the old psalms being sung and hymns being sung, and it's been really great to be able to get more hymns into our lives. They are so important. I did not realize. See, I grew up in a church where we sang hymns. We had an organ and sang hymns. I didn't think anything about it until when I was older and I was starting to read the Bible for myself, really for the first time. Like, okay, I'm going to read the Bible this year and do the year reading plan. Then I would come across so many pieces in the Bible where I'm like, oh, I know this chapter. This is a hymn. And I didn't know that that's where it's from. So I didn't really appreciate until I was an adult just how much scripture gets into your brain and your soul when you're singing hymns. It's just a way to learn scripture. Not just, but it's a great way to learn scripture. Okay, so that's for hymns. On some of that was basically walking through term 1. Term 2 and 3 are largely just continuations of everything that I just showed you. There are some new books, especially in literature, that you start. In term 1, you finish Princess and the Goblin, and term 2, you read Children of the New Forest. This was really a great one where you learned all about the English Civil War that I really was not familiar with, but it's a huge part of the history here, and actually a huge part of our history from what came from it. Anyway, so this was wonderful that I want to read again with my daughter. So I think in term 3, there's a few new books. Oh yeah, Secrets of the Woods, which this is the one in all of the year 3 readings that I've not actually read, but it looks great. So this is scheduled. We'll see when we get to it. I haven't read it yet, but I will read it with my daughter, possibly with my son as well, since he also never heard of it. Because this looks like, it's talking about forest creatures, wood mouse, kingfisher, red squirrel, deer, all of these things. So I think that this sounds like a really good book. Another one that we will read in term 3 is The Landing of the Pilgrims. I read this to my kids over Thanksgiving, maybe 3 years ago now, and it was really wonderful. I think they both would like to hear it again. It's a very quick one to get through. So this is one that I usually would just read over lunch, and you get through it in a couple of weeks. And then the Jungle Book as well. I had my son read Jungle Book this year just as a reading that he did on his own, and he hated it. Now, I had read this to him out loud a couple years prior, but he had forgotten all about it, and he liked it back then when I read it to him. So I'm thinking that this one might be she listens to an audiobook and follows along. I could not believe how much he hated reading the Jungle Book. Like, he was fighting it. It's kind of wild. Anyway, and another one that was added was reading The Bard of Avon, as well as the story about Queen Elizabeth I. But we have that one at our library. We've also read that one a couple of times, but we'll read it again because it's just like a picture book like this. But this one about Shakespeare, again, I read this over probably a couple of lunches last year or 2 years ago. And we'll read it again because it's good stuff. It's a good story about William Shakespeare. I do think that it is beneficial to just see everything that is involved with the readings, and to let you know that I went through so many books. It looks like so much, but like I said, a lot of times you're just reading one chapter a week out of some of these books. Some of them you're reading 2-3 chapters in a term, 10 chapters in a year on some of these books. So it's actually not that bad. Some of these books you read over the course of several years. It's not as bad as it looks, and it's actually very doable. And year 3 is kind of a tricky time though. If year 3, year 2, year 1, mom is doing so much heavy lifting with the reading, Get some audiobooks. Maybe don't read all of the books in the schedule. Maybe save some for, we're just going to do that over the summer, or we're not going to read that book at all. We'll put that on the list for something that you do on your own a few years from now. That is all fine. Like, please don't stress yourself out over all of these readings. Just get to the ones that you feel like look the best for you at this time, something that's doable. There are other free reads that you can do. Some of the ones that I am interested in on the free reading portion is Alice in Wonderland. We're halfway through. It's way shorter than what I thought it would be. So this is going to take no time at all. I'm reading this one to my kids right now during lunch, and they are loving it. We're also going to be reading Swallows and Amazons because this summer we want to take a trip up to the Lake District while we're still here in England. So we'll be reading this. And then I also want to read A Little Princess. That's kind of what I have on her for the extra reading. Let me know below if you have any questions about any of these. I will try to link as much as I can, but just go to Ambleside Online. They have links to everything there as well. And they've put in so much work to this. I'm just really, really grateful to the people who put this education together for free for other people to use and work off of, build off of it, use it as, like I said, I use this as a guide, as my spine to the curriculum that I'm walking through with my kids, but it's not necessarily going to be my judge and jury on if we get to everything or not, if I've failed or not failed. So I love it. I find it very simple to use. And again, with all of these readings, after you're done, you just ask your student, be like, okay, well, what do you remember? What can you tell me about what we just read? Or can you narrate back to me what happened? And then that is kind of what locks it in their heads. And then you can just discuss it, ask questions about it. It doesn't have to be that same question every time. It can just be like, man, what would you have done if you were in that situation? Or just any of these things where you're just talking about the books that you're reading. It's amazing how much you can learn just from reading together. Well, I've chattered on for long enough. I have to go and do other things, but I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you subscribe to this channel so you'll see more videos just like this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. This one, The Heroes of Asgard. Oh, no, wait, it's this one. The Heroes. Oh, wait, what do I have here? I have two books. Are these two the same? The Heroes. Okay, this is The Heroes. Heroes.